All right, today we're going to be joined by Mr. Wayne Defrancesco, Director of Instruction at where, Wayne?
Woodmont Country Club in Rockville, Maryland.
Okay, Wayne, how are you today, Wayne?
Great.
Okay, good. So why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself personally? Anything not golf-related, hobbies, whatever.
Well, I'm married for 20 years. I got two daughters. One is a freshman at the University of Georgia, and the other is a sophomore here at high school in Howard County, Maryland. So neither one of them play golf. Couldn't get them to play golf. My oldest plays lacrosse, and my youngest likes to stare at the computer most of the day. But for my hobby is music. I'm into the blues harmonica, so I've been playing for about 5 years, and I kind of treat it like serious people treat golf. I take lessons. I travel to take lessons from the best players, and I take internet lessons from a guy up in New Jersey. Applying the learning process to another skill like that has been a lot of fun for me. So that keeps me busy, keeps me from obsessing about. I spent too many years staring in the mirror, looking at my golf swing, before I realized that wasn't really doing any good. So I figured I would apply my abilities to something different. But that's been a lot of fun.
I'm actually a big harmonica fan. A fan, at least. I mean, I like Blues Traveler. I like the guy from the Loving Spoonful, who's right here from New York. He's pretty good.
There's a lot of great harp players, that's for sure. You got some. You have a chance to see some great players up there. I'll have to. I'll clue you in on who you should be going to see.
Okay. All right. So when and where did you start playing golf?
My dad put a club in my hand when I was 9 years old, and we would just hit wiffle balls in the backyard. And at that point, you couldn't go out on the golf course at the country club until you were 10. So when I was 10, I started playing, and it was really just a summer sport. You know, in the winter, I would do bowling, or we wouldn't play golf in the winter. And that was pretty much all through high school. You know, in the winter, you didn't play because they didn't really have a junior national tour, you know, back in the early 70s. So, but I never played in a tournament until I was 12, and I was getting to be pretty decent, and my dad just entered me in a tournament, and I remember finishing second. I shot 92, and I didn't think much of it, but I got a big trophy, and that was it for me. I said, I like this. I like winning these trophies, so that made me want to keep doing it. And I became a good player, you know, when I was 13 and when I was 15 and when I was 17, you know, I would win more often than not in my age groups. And, you know, I kind of broke out into the national scene. When I was 17, I qualified for the U.S. Amateur and went to the round of 32. And I ended up going to Wake Forest University from there, where Curtis Strange and Jay Haas were on the team, and they had just won the national championship a couple times. So, you know, I got introduced to the highest level of play at that point.
There's no better way of learning than by trial by fire. Your dad just threw you in a tournament and you finished second. That was cool.
Yeah, you know, I just didn't know what I was doing. Just kept score, shot 92, and that ended up being pretty good. You know, who knew?
So, well, what happened after your time at Wake Forest?
Well, I spent 2 years there, and of course the team was so good I couldn't really break into the starting lineup. Those guys were amazing, but you know, I wasn't bad, but I wasn't at the level to break in. The problem was the coach, who's a legend, Jesse Haddock. He had a run-in with the athletic director, and after my freshman year, he left the school and he went to Oral Roberts, and they hired a guy from Georgia Southern who turned out to be a disaster. So the old guys quit. He didn't really fit in, and at the end of the year, it didn't appear that he was going to get fired, so I transferred. And after I transferred to Louisiana State, where the Maryland coach happened to be there and knew me and gave me a scholarship, which was nice. But the coach got fired and Jesse came back, but it was a little too late for me. So I sat out a year, and as it turned out, the year I played, my junior year at LSU, for some reason, I played amazingly well, and I ended up being a first-team All-American. So, and that was one of the great All-American teams with Freddie Couples and Corey Pavin, Gary Hallberg, John Cook, Bobby Clampett, Bob Tway. So, and then, me. It's like, who's that guy? But I like to show people that plaque because the second team was populated with Payne Stewart, Mark O'Meara, Joey Sindelar, and Mark Wiebe. So that was a pretty good second team. So that was a good year. You can see all those guys are turning 50, in this year and last year, the last couple of years. And, the senior tour has gotten really strong. So all my age group guys are just now getting out there. Jeff Sluman, a lot of the guys that I played with back then are the 50, 51, 2-year-olds now. In fact, Gary Hallberg is one of my best friends. Played with him at Wake, and he just won a tournament a couple of weeks ago.
So after LSU, did you pursue the golf professionally as a player?
Well, it was interesting. I did an Ian Baker Finch my senior year. I disappeared. I couldn't break an egg. I went from great to horrible, and then it was so frustrating that I quit playing altogether. And I tried again. I again tried to quit, and that's when I got my real estate license, and that didn't work out. And I ended up teaching after that because my back injuries really wouldn't let me practice enough to make the jump to the next level. I needed to get better, in order to really play for a living. I was perfectly willing to grind and practice, forever. So, I had the will, but every time that I worked really hard, it would be to my detriment because I couldn't take it. I just couldn't take the pounding. So I would end up hurting myself. And when I played, I needed the practice, but then I couldn't do it. So I finally realized that it really wasn't meant to be. I wasn't going to be a tour player, but I still had a great love of the game, and I still really liked to play. And I found that when I started to teach that there was no way I was just going to do that and not play because that would have just driven me crazy. So I just got I just started playing in the section club pro stuff, and that's really a great avenue if you can't quite, if you're not quite at the point where you, for whatever reason, where you're going to make it on the tour. As a club professional, you have amazing opportunities. I mean, I played in 5 PGA championships, qualifying through the National Club Pro. So, and it's great competition. I mean, you'll see, some of the guys that were club pros have made it on the tour. I mean, it's tough competition. There's some really, really good players.
Well, coming from the Met section, I know that. I mean, you have Jim Albus. And,
yeah, I played with Jim when I was up there, and the first 9 he shot 29.
I watched him at the senior tour championship down in Myrtle Beach one year, and he took Ray Floyd all the way. I mean, they were playing that 18th hole playoff, and I also took lessons with Darrell Kessner, and he was one guy that I thought was a can't miss. I thought he was going to tear up the senior tour, and for whatever reason, it just didn't work out that way. But he was a guy that could talk lights out. I've never seen anything like that.
Well, he was so, Darrell was so close. He just never quite got the break. He missed Q school by a shot a couple times, and sometimes it's really just about having the opportunity to go out there and play every week. Darrell never quite made it. I've known Darrell forever. He certainly is one of the teacher and player, the combination. You don't find too many guys that have the resume that Darrell has, and I would probably be one of the few couple guys that, if you looked at our resumes, his is better, but it would be similar, because we both won the National Club Pro. We both played in many majors, and we both teach a lot and enjoy teaching.
That's what I was going to say. There's a striking parallel between you and Darryl in that sense, that you're both good players and both good teachers. So when and where did you start teaching golf, and what led you down that path?
When I was playing the mini tours, I was playing the Goosey Tour in the early 80s, and I think about 83 or 4, I had a period of time in the summer where I needed to make a little money. My first wife wasn't making a lot of money, but she was kind of supporting us. And the head pro at Bay Hill happened to be an old Wake Forest guy, and they were running the Arnold Palmer Junior Golf Academy, which would go for probably 6 weeks in the summer. I got a hold of Dick and asked him if I might be able to get a job doing that, and he said sure. So my first teaching was with the juniors at Bay Hill, probably in 84 maybe, and I really enjoyed it. It was something that a lot of guys just don't really like. They want to be out playing and beating balls, and they don't really like spending time with other people. And I really enjoyed it. And the kids would ask me questions and ask for guidance, and you could really see that it would make a difference to how they look to their future by how you would help them and mentor them and sort of give them direction. And I thought that was pretty cool. So when I ended up figuring out that I couldn't play anymore, it was pretty natural for me to look to teaching so I could stay in the game and make a living. Playing golf for a living is one of the hardest things that there is. So, if you watch the videos that I do, I rarely criticize players for anything because, I'm looking at their swings because these guys are good. They're better than I am. So, I'm not going to criticize what works. I just like to observe and look at what works and add that to whatever I learn and know about the swing. It's because I watch good players do what they do. So there's a lot of humility involved in, playing, which is something that's missing, I think, and generally in the teaching industry is the humbleness that is involved with keeping score on a golf course in competition. It's pretty easy to tell people what to do and to insist that what you know is right. But when you go out on the golf course and you've got to hit the shots and keep score and turn it in, you're not quite as adamant about everything that you know being perfectly correct, because the game is so demanding, and there's so many facets to it that the variations are endless. So I try to look at successful people and see what they've done. For every Anthony Kim swing, there's a Ray Floyd. So you can't even, it's like they're not even playing the same game. And yet, Ray Floyd has a record that Anthony Kim would enjoy having. He might not enjoy having that golf swing, but he would certainly like the results. So, I learned a long time ago that it's more about my preferences when it comes to, you got to teach something. And I teach people that aren't great. I'm not teaching tour players all day. I teach the full spectrum of people. And it's way harder to teach someone with limited ability to hit a proper 30-yard shot than it is to tweak a tour player's swing so that he feels comfortable about, hitting a 1-yard draw or something. So, anyway, I think the playing part of it is important. I think it grounds you, and it especially with young players that want to get really good and they think they might want to play and explore playing for a living. eventually. If you don't play, it's hard to offer them, what realistically is going on.
So what would you say your teaching philosophy is? Is it just, how would you describe it?
Well, yeah, I would say that over many years, I have honed my own personal preferences for how I would teach a beginner. So I would have a model, more or less, for each part of the swing. I feel like I need to be able to answer every question. If you're going to take a lesson from me, if you're going to ask me a question about what happens during the swing at any point, then I should know, I should have an answer for you. I should be able to tell you what anything is doing. The hips, the hands, the wrists, the grip, the feet, the head. So how does that mean that, it's my way or the highway? Absolutely not, because it's very rare where you are presented with a blank slate. If you took a lesson from me, you've got tons of stuff in there and you have a swing. So when people say, why don't you just work with what I have? Well, of course, that's exactly what you always do. I always work with what's presented to me. So, what I do is I put the swing on the video and I analyze it and I try to figure out fairly quickly how I would like to progress the person to the point where they could be better. It's pretty simple.
Sure.
Although it's endlessly complicated.
Who would you say has had the greatest influence on your teaching philosophies?
Well, when you play, you are always around guys that are working with somebody, wherever you are. So when I was down in Florida in the 80s, the teaching business was just starting, really. So Ledbetter was working at Greenleaf, and he started up about 81 or 2 when Dennis Watson won the World Series of Golf, and he hit it big. So a lot of the mini tour guys were going down to see him. I went to see him one time, and he took a video of my swing, and we sat in his little room, and we watched it, and we went back and forth about what we thought was going on in the swing. And when I left there, I thought to myself, I could do that. It's like, in fact, I had a video camera. It's like, not that David Ledbetter wasn't a very smart guy, but I was certainly better than he was as far as playing golf. And I had every ability to film my swing and look at it. And he had a certain couple of things that he liked the swing to do, but I was staring at Hogan's swings back then and reading and studying. I pretty much had to redo my swing because of my back. So I was involved in some of the technique stuff. I just figured I would be my own best teacher. If I had a video camera, it's me and Mr. Sony, and I should be able to help myself, especially if I was going to be helping other people. I should be able to make myself have a sound enough technique, in spite of my infirmities, that I should be a good player. I should have a good short game. I should know what I was doing with a putter in my hands. I should know how to hit any shot. And, that's what I set out to do. I wanted to keep improving as a player and as a teacher all at the same time. So that was interesting. And everything pretty much else that I got, I avoided going to see teachers directly. I just didn't want that influence. I didn't want to be trying to do what somebody was telling me to do, So I took it in. I'd play with guys, and I might pick their brains on the range. What did he say? What, you working with Haney? What's he working on? And he would show me something or other, and I would think about it. And, some of the stuff I would incorporate and some not. There's a legacy involved. Teaching builds over many years. People watch players, study the swings. They make observations, and they come up with an interpretation of what's going on, and they focus on certain things, and then that becomes their thing. Some guys want to sell it to a mass audience. Like if, look at recently, you've got Hardy, you've got the one plane swing, and then you've got stack and tilt. Those things are just preferences. They're just sets of it's a guy who says, I I see this in a lot of swings. This is what I'm going to teach. I'm going to give it a name, and I'm going to make a DVD, and I'm going to sell it, and a book, and everything else. So what does that mean? Well, it means, I like to bend over, and I like to turn my arms swing on the same angle as my shoulders, and more or less, and that's a thing. Stack and tilt. It's like I like to have the head stay left and the weight stay left and then transfer more left. So amongst other things. So these are just sets of preferences. It's just the way they see it. It's not rocket science. It's not a whole new thing. It's just a way. And a teacher is gonna need to come up with his way. And I always wanted my way to be, original. I wanted it to be mine, not somebody else's. Jim McClain will state freely that he took what he knows he took lessons from everybody he could find to take a lesson from. I went the other way. I didn't take lessons from anybody. I was out there trying to do it myself and figure it out for myself. So, and I really think it, I read about like a 22-year-old kid teaching Kenny Perry, and I'm like, it's not possible. You can't be a good teacher at 22. It's not even possible. Kenny Perry might disagree with me, and who cares what I think anyway, but still, you're not a good teacher until you've had many, many years of seeing all sorts of different players with problems, and until you've got experience in fixing things and coming up with ways to, you get a guy with terminal throwaway and you've got to teach him how to lag the club and he can't even throw a ball sidearm without falling down. That's hard. That's really hard to do. And it takes years and years to figure out a method to help people get their arms around what hitting a golf ball is all about. Because there isn't anything harder to do. Trust me. Because you try, right? I read some of the stuff that you write about it, and we're on the same page. There isn't anything more difficult. And the other day, you had that great quote out of Homer Kelly's book, and I use that quote all the time. It's like you can't make, people say, "Oh, keep it simple, stupid." Yeah, that's my philosophy. It's like, come on, you must not play.
Like Greg McHatton said, some guys try to oversimplify it and they just leave out all kinds of important stuff, and you walk away with a half-assed lesson or a half-assed swing thought. It's a hard way it's hard to approach, because I imagine you might get some guy who's never played golf before, bought himself a set of clubs, he's got a corporate outing, and you have to teach this guy how to get the ball airborne, right?
You're not really gonna do anything lasting there, but that's why I'm saying that the skill involved in teaching is not so much all the information that you have, it's how you disseminate it. How do you give it to somebody in a progression where they can actually start to apply some of it and then eventually use it on the course and improve. And the problem is people don't want to look at a project as years of work. People give me something, just give me a tip. Just give me a tweak, make me better. Like, you can't, sorry.
That's part of the problem, I think, is that people out there giving tips and doing things, and a lot of times we ask ourselves, like, well, what makes a good teacher? Well, let's say I give you $50 for a half an hour, or whatever your rate is, and you give me a lesson, I walk away. I don't do anything. I mean, all you can do is show me and demonstrate, and it's up to me to practice these things, right? I walk away, I come back, now I expect to get better as a result of paying you, right? Not because I'm supposed to be practicing, but because I'm paying you, I got to get better. Isn't that? I think that's one of the unfair things about teaching.
Well, technology is better now. If you're really going to give somebody a good lesson, you're not going to tell them one thing. you're going to try to get them, you're going to try to educate them about how a golf swing works. So there's a number of things, and then you can boil it down to here's what you need to do, right? So you're really asking people to become engaged and then go practice some things. So I used to encourage people to take notes. We'd even write down a couple of points. Now with the video software you have, I can take the swings that I film, draw lines, voice over, and email it to them before they leave. So now they go home, and instead of desperately trying to remember some of the stuff you told them when they're in the car driving away and thinking, I can't remember anything because it's all a blur, now they can, don't worry about it. Don't try to remember everything because I'm going to go over everything you need. And when you get home, you can pop it up on your computer or your phone, and there it is. You can see it. I'm talking. I explain it. I think that's probably one of the biggest advances in teaching that I've seen in the last 20 years. Is the ability, you give somebody a DVD, they're not going to watch it. Trust me, you film the whole lesson, it's like an hour, and you take it, and nobody's going to watch that. I just quit doing that. It's like, because people wouldn't watch it. They wouldn't have time. But you got time to watch a 5 or 6 minute summary of the lesson, and you can watch, and that has been tremendously helpful. Because then I don't have to worry about whether or not someone is completely overwhelmed, and I can touch on a few more things and try to make it more educational because they'll have a chance to retain it by going over it. It's like you get to, if you could only open a book up and read a chapter once, you're going to flunk the test. It's like nobody can remember that much stuff. So you go over it and over it and over. You read a little bit, you read a little more, you make notes, you go back over it again, and then you try to figure out how you're going to remember the stuff. It's the same thing with learning how to play golf. There's a lot going on there.
Sorry. And that leads me to, I had the privilege, I was privy enough to have the privilege of being able to get a sneak peek at your new website. Now, I'm not somebody that's easily impressed. I've been around the golf business, golf industry for professionally. I've worked in the golf industry, and I've encountered a lot of everything actually, And I'm familiar with lessons. I've taken lessons from a lot of the top instructors in the country. What you put together there was really outstanding. I was very impressed by it. I like the stroke pattern you have there, which is a combination, in my opinion, of the classical and the modern. I really like the way you meld those two components. It really is good. Another thing that I saw that you touched on that rarely anybody ever touches on is I know Greg McCadden, my coach, he touches on the ground forces, harnessing the ground, and the way you presented that with the pivot and the downstroke pivot, and how you explain the whole process is really nice. I thought it was very, 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 very enlightening and very educational to anybody who was going to go on there. When I've never seen a good players play into the ground. High handicappers, they play on the ground. You always see them skating. You
pretty much identified the signature that we're trying to use to differentiate what we're doing. I mean, a lot of this stuff, if I go over it, you'll have seen takeaways and shaft positions and theories on how you like to plane the club. The thing that I have seen through observation is, like you said, it's the way that good players use the ground. So if anybody that goes on Gotham wants to go to my YouTube channel and now the website, all the videos, I've done probably 50 or so players, and almost none of them will ever lift above their original height, and almost all of them lower either both the backswing or the forward swing or one or the other. But they're going to be hitting the ball from below where they started, and not usually from backing away, but from compressing into the ground from the midsection. And it's evidently that's a fairly controversial thing, because if you look at some of the comments that I get, there's tons of, it's not a conventional thought. All you have to do is watch Tiger hit a bad shot, and inevitably one of the announcers is going to talk about how he lowered his head too much. Every time. You get a guy like Overton, who's got a pronounced drop right at impact, just like Byron Nelson. And there's another comment from Peter Kostis that if he didn't do that, he would be better. You know, it's I don't get it. It's almost comical to me that the lack of observation of some of the guys on television, they just don't spend any time. They have their ideas. They're old times. They've been around for a long time, and they're not changing their opinions, but that's what they are. They're opinions. They're not based on anything, because the evidence is in the swings. It's all there. It's all in the swings. If you watch enough swings, you'll see if 90% of the guys are lowering during the swing, and the swings that you're analyzing are all successful, really successful players, some of the greatest of the greats, and some of the guys that are really playing nicely now, it's obvious that that has to be a good thing. It can't be bad. And yet people will argue, well, that's not good for the average guy. You know, as an average guy, what are you trying to achieve? How are you going to get to the next level? What are you aiming for? Well, you would like to swing like a better player, right? That's all I'm doing. I'm just trying to identify what makes a better player, what makes a better swing. And compressing into the ground is one of the things that most people don't understand or touch on, and think for some reason, the old adage of maintain your posture is just as bad as keep your head down. It's just one of those, it's just a conventional phrase that, it's like hold the club as light as you can. That's another disastrous, all these things that just exist, and they must be right. So many of them are not anywhere near correct. And then when people understand that these things aren't the right things to be trying to do, it opens up a whole new vista for them. I mean, they have a chance to do something a little bit better. So we own the domain name Compression Golf, so we're going to probably end up using that at some point, once we get going, because that's kind of what we're talking about. Compression, you would think of compressing. Everyone who wants to compress the ball, I think most people understand, who are half serious, that the idea is to compress the ball against the club face. But compressing into the ground, that's different. That's different.
That's a whole new paradigm for learning.
And if you look at what Foley is doing, he's into that big time.
Oh yeah.
So
I think even my coach Greg McCadden, who's a golf stroke doctorate in the golfing machine, he might be viewed as controversial because he did some biomechanical studies back in the 90s, and it's clear as day when they put in all they modeled Hogan and all the other great players. And one of the things I asked him, I said, how tall was Nicholas at impact? He said 4'10". How tall was Trevino? 4'4". And Hogan, and he made a model of Hogan. Hogan got up, went down to his lowest, and came up to about 6 foot tall. You know what I mean? And that's it's part of the golf swing. That's a dynamic motion.
Right.
The minute you try to position yourself or stagnate yourself, you're hurting yourself, I believe.
There's a place for positions, and there's a place, and you're filming and you're watching it and you stop it and it's static, that you can take certain positions and say, okay, when I'm here, I would like to have this here. But as soon as you start the movement, you're letting the camera flow and then stopping it. You're just saying, when I pass by the point, in the club vertical, or I stood up, or I did this. So in another great
Kind of break
advance in the video, can you hear me?
Yeah.
It's at 60 frames per second with the mouse and the computer, you're able to seamlessly do frame by frame, so it doesn't go click, 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 click. And that's real different, because I can start to see patterns of movement that I couldn't really see before, which is a big advance. It's very helpful. And then when I show people, and if you watch the videos that I do, I'll run back and forth through a position, and you can really start to see how one movement is the result of the direction of the other movements, good and bad. So it's very interesting. That's one of the things that is another thing that's very helpful now, to get that sense of flow rather than the click, click, click of the stop frame.
Okay, so
the top.
I'm sorry. Say that again, please.
Okay.
So can you give us a breakdown on what your new site now, WayneDefrancesco.com, is going to entail?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that it entails, and I don't know if you perused it at all, I've been writing for a magazine that used to be Washington Golf Monthly, and now it's Golf Styles, and they distribute about 300,000. They're in like 6 regions, but I've been writing for them for about 15 years, so I've got about 100, and they're not technical articles, they're essays. And they're in the neighborhood of 2,000 to 3,000 words each. So I've been writing about golf, but learning golf, like, how do you learn how to play golf? What are the impediments that people run into? Why is it so difficult? And then I write about my competitions, about how I felt playing in the PGA, or how I felt when I won National Club Pro, or how I felt when I tossed away a tournament at the end. So that's one of the things that you get to read. You get reading material. And then the videos, I've got 56, and we're adding to that. So you'll be able to see lessons that I give. You'll be able to see analysis of tour players, past and present. And then the real thing that the membership will involve is what you got to see was the instructional videos that I filmed, and we've got about 35 hours of video instruction, and it goes through the whole range of everything in the swing from start to finish. So you got a preview of that. We went through just about every short game shot I could think of, and it's detailed. It's not dumbed down. And it's something that where I try to go through, okay, sorry, I try to go through what I know about the stroke technique involved in hitting a shot, plus my other experience on how to get yourself to be able to do it. So, most everybody will have a way they like to hit a shot. I've hit those shots in major championships. Not that nobody else has ever done that before, but that's one of the things that I find is helpful to me in trying to relate to people how to do something, is that I've had to do it when my heart's beating extra fast. So when you're nervous and there's a lot of pressure, you really have to you got to refine the way that you do things, because you can't think of everything. You're get endless distractions when you're on a golf course. So you have to understand how to get yourself prepared to hit a shot, what you should be thinking about, and then how you're going to execute it. And that's from driving off the first tee, hitting it under a tree, hitting it out of the rough, hitting a normal shot from the fairway, any club, working the ball, whatever. Anywhere that ball lands, you got to walk over to it and figure out how to hit it the next time. So, that's an all-encompassing type of a thing. Tried to get the website. We designed it it's for people who are seriously interested in technique and application of technique, not just technique for informational purposes, but this is about taking what you learn and playing golf with it, competing. I'm a competitor. So I feel like people, if they're going to take this in, it's for a reason, not just so they can feel like they can sit at dinner and talk about what they know about the swing. These people, I think they want to go out on the golf course and use it. And then they want to beat somebody. You want to win something. Like if you're at a club, you want to win. You want to beat somebody. That's what it's all about. Golf is it's a competitive game. If you're serious, it doesn't matter if you're playing handicap or not. You want to play good and you want to win something. So that's what's always driven me. So I've tried to figure out how to do this stuff as best I could. And I still want to win stuff. So I'm still looking at it and trying to learn.
All right. Okay, Wayne. So do you have any senior tour aspirations?
No, it's pretty hard to break into the senior tour. I'm not physically capable of practicing enough, really. I'd like to play. I get to try to qualify for the U.S. Senior Open, and if I had played any good in the Senior Club Pro, I qualify for the Senior PGA. So, I just keep working on my game, and I play in all the section Club Pro stuff and the National Club Pro, and then try to qualify for the National Senior. So, I have my opportunities to play in this, that, but to my days of trying to play a tour or make a living, I have a nice job teaching down at Woodmont and got a nice family, and traveling around the country doesn't throw me. So, and I'm really not quite good enough. People ask me all the time, well, you're going to play the senior tour? And I'm like, well, look at the guys on the senior tour. They were playing the tour just a couple of years ago. So they've been better than I was for 25 years. They're still better than I am. So, I'm not going to suddenly beat, John Cook and Jeff Sluman and Mark O'Meara just because I turned 50, So, but, I love to play. So, like I said, the competition in the club pro level is pretty intense. So it really doesn't matter what you're playing in. It's hard. It's hard to keep your game going and try to improve.
What about a guy like Michael Allen?
Well, there's a guy that was still playing the tour when he turned 50. He never stopped playing. So he's been a good player forever, and he really didn't ever quit. So he's been grinding it out. A lot of those guys, when you subtract 300 or 400 yards off the course, it's just what they need. Just a touch less distance. Not much. They still hit it out there. Look, I think Corey Pavin kept his card. I think Allen came within a few spots of keeping his PGA Tour card. And that's while they're playing the senior tour. So, it's possible, but he didn't come out of nowhere. There's very few guys there aren't many Dana Quigleys, Bruce Fleischers, and it's pretty hard to do anyway now that the qualifying is so limited. Albus did it, but Wargo, Reddy, you can pretty much count on a couple of hands the guys who ended up out there being very successful without ever really being successful tour players. It's a rarity.
Can you describe your pre-shot routine, or just your routine in general? From the moment you leave a cart, or if you're walking, what goes through your mind? Like, for example, you hit that pitching wedge at the, you have the YouTube video when you come out with the CPC. What's racing through your mind? Well, how do you go about as you approach your shot?
I'm a big stickler for having a set procedure. I'm not obsessed with having it be a certain thing, but just that you have your thing. So when I hit balls, On the golf course, you pick your club and then your setup routine begins when you're standing behind the ball on the target line, visualizing the shot and trying to decide where you want to aim and how you want to hit the shot and how high it's going to go, where you want to land it. And then you walk around and there's a set way to step in, set your feet, spread out, waggle, look up, and swing. So when I teach, I make sure that people have it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is what you do, and you do it every time. The important thing is when you're on the range and you've got a ruler or one of those sticks down and you have aligned yourself at a target, now you don't have to go behind the ball every time. So you eliminate the get behind the ball, walk around. So what I tell people to do is back away from the ball, grip the club, and then step in exactly the same way that you would do it on the course when you get over to the side of the ball. So at that point, it's, I do it right foot in, aim the club, feet together, move the left, move the right, waggle the club, look up, waggle, swing. So there's a timing and a rhythm to that. And if you do that every time you hit a shot on the range, especially if you don't have a mirror there, if you're not working on a drill, if you're just hitting a shot, you just want to hit a shot, that's the way you want to do it. So that when you get to the first tee, what you're going to do, you just did it. However many balls you just hit or however many balls you hit that week, you're going to use the same timing, the same step-in procedure, the same alignment procedure, and your thought process becomes more organized because when you're focused on getting prepared to hit the shot, you don't have time to think about how you're going to swing until right before you pull the trigger. So all the stuff you learn about how to swing a golf club it has to be boiled down to thoughts that can fit into, what's the simplest swing key of all time, back and through. It's a meaningless phrase. You go back and you go through. So if you say back and through, that's the back swing and the forward swing. It encompasses the whole thing, right? So what does that mean to you, back and through? Well, you go to the library or you go to the bookstore and there's shelves and shelves of books. What are they about? They're all about back and through. So there's the dumbest thing and the dumbest phrase you could ever utter, but it encompasses the whole swing, and it could mean anything to you. It could be the takeaway you're working on. It could be the feeling of compressing into the ground. It could be trying to flatten your swing at the top. It could be a transition thought. It could be one back swing thought, one forward swing. It could be anything. Bobby Jones wrote the greatest article I've ever read, and he used to write newspaper articles for the Atlanta Constitution back in the teens. And he wrote a short piece where he was playing with a friend of his who wasn't a great golfer, and he was playing well, and the friend asked him, "Why are you playing so well?" And he thought about it, and he said, "Well, I have a couple of swing keys right now that are working quite nicely. In 2 weeks, if you come back and ask me, they won't be the same. I'll have overcooked one thing and underdone another thing and figured something out, or I'll start hitting it over here, over there, and inevitably, I'll have something else going on. And that's what I'm constantly doing. I'm just constantly trying to find things that help me to play better. But the key is that all of the things that he comes up with are grounded within his fundamentals. Whatever he knew about the swing, he would always choose thoughts that were within what he knew. He wasn't reinventing the wheel all the time. So his point was, if he's fishing for ideas every night after a couple of weeks to keep playing good, And he's already has a great foundation he's already a great player. If he's doing that, what's the average guy doing? So what do? Well, you have to develop the foundation. You have to develop your model so that you can choose things from within what you know, and then you can help yourself to rectify bad shots and play better and swing better. But you can't stand over the ball and think about everything that you think you should be remembering. And that's where people become fearful of mechanics. I mean, there's a great fear of technique amongst the masses. That's the keep it simple crowd. Everybody is afraid of thinking too much. So when people start talking about, I was thinking too much on that shot, I'm like, what were you thinking about? They don't even know, but whatever it was too much. And that caused the bad shot. I'm like, well, what's the alternative? Well, I shouldn't think so much. In fact, I play better when I don't think about anything. And I'm like, well, we just looked at your swing. That's how you swing when you don't think about anything. Or when you think about, well, we don't like that swing. You're shooting 100.
Right.
How can you not think about anything? If you want to shoot 90 or 80, you shoot 100 when you don't think about anything. Right? So how do you think you're going to shoot 85? You might have to think about something.
Right.
Right. So it becomes a matter of what is that? How do you get to that? That's the hard part, is figuring out what to think about and how to incorporate thinking about that when you go play. It's hard to do something different than you already know when you go out on a golf course. But you have to. You have no choice. People that say, well, I'll just go play, but then I'll work on it later. I'm like, well, how's that going to help? You have to take the idea and take it out on the course and test it out and see if anything happens, see what's up. Can't just leave it on the range and then go just do whatever and then come back. That doesn't make any sense. So it's a constant, you got to educate people about that kind of stuff, because people really don't know how to think about getting better at golf. So that's what I do all the time. I work on the technical issues in their swing, but you spend at least half the time trying to explain how they're going to incorporate it, like how they're going to actually get better, how their swing is going to change, and they're going to know it's going to change. So a lot of that is working with the video, and you really have to go out on the course and play with people to see what they're doing out there. Because if you don't, if I put a stick on the ground and the guy hits the ball great, and then he goes out on the course and he aims 50 yards to the right, it's not the same thing.
Right.
Right. So how many people say, well, I hit it great on the range, and I can't take it out on the course. Well, you gotta figure out why. Why is that? So, to me, the mental game is almost meaningless until you have a solid technique. Until you know what you're up to and you can hit the ball fairly well, it doesn't matter how you feel about it. Well, guys that are really good, it kind of matters how they feel about being 5 under par. Because guys that won't let themselves get to be 8 under par, it's a big problem. When a guy gets 3 over, if he can't get it back to even, that's a big problem too. So that, but when you're shooting 100, you're not supposed to feel good about that.
Right. So. I'm of the impression that, I hear a lot of banter on the internet about a whole lot of things. And I think that if a lot of people about the curvature of the ball, about this and that, I think that if people learn how to make center face contact, it would eliminate a whole lot of maladies. What do you think about that?
Well, the funniest articles are the articles on on course management in the golf magazines. Aiming for the right side of the fairway, setting up on the left side of the tee. It's like, if the guy could hit it in the right side of the fairway,
That's fine. I find that.
the guy's trying to hit the ball in bounds.
Trying to keep it in front of him.
He wants to find it.
Right.
He wants to hit it. He wants to hit it forward. The right side of the fairway. It's like, come on. It's like that's not meaningful to a guy who slices one 80 yards to the right and then snap hooks the next one and then hits a good one.
Right.
It's like he's just aiming forward. You just want to know how to aim at something.
Advance the ball.
Right. So, you're exactly right. I play with guys that are decent players, and it'll end up poor, and I'll say, look, what were you trying to do? He goes, well, I was trying to cut that one in there. And I'm like, why were you doing that for? It's like, why were you trying to make it harder on yourself? Why don't you just aim at something and try to hit it there? If it cuts a little bit, great. If it doesn't cut, great. If it draws a little bit, if it ends up within 5 yards of where you're aiming, you're going to be happy. It's like, don't work the ball. Don't try to hook one in there. It's like, just make the best swing you can, hit the ball in the club face, and get it to go close to where you're aiming. And we'll all be very happy with that.
Okay. All right, Wayne. So I think that's all we have for you today. And unless you have any closing statements you'd like to make.
No, I just hope people take a look at my YouTube site and the website and take advantage of what I'm trying to offer. It's not there's some websites that offer tips and methods and, but this is different. It's for golfers that really want the information that they can apply and maybe help themselves. It's not gonna give them exactly what to do. You don't have to swing this way, but I think people will learn a lot about how the swing works by watching the best players, and you look at the form of the analysis is consistent, so then you could do it to yourself and compare yourself to some people, and that's what it's designed for. Educate people. The game is really difficult, it's really complicated, and we're just trying our best to get our arms around it and get a little better at it.
You get my ringing endorsement, and but what we do is we let the readers decide for themselves. I think you've addressed the demographic of the people that follow my blog, which is a serious golfer and 15 to scratch and teaching pros and mini tour players. Those are the guys that are out there for the most part. And there's a lot of other people also. I'm sure there's a lot of beginners, just golf aficionados in general. So I think what you've done is right up their alley.
Those are the people we're looking for, really. Yeah. We're not spamming the universe, trying to get everybody involved. This is really not, golf's really not for everybody. When you look at it, you're not going to get everybody to play golf well and enjoy it. But for the people that are serious about it and really, really want to get some detailed information, then, I'm trying to offer everybody a lend a hand here.
Absolutely. And like I say, Wayne, it was a pleasure talking to you, and it was a pleasure meeting you.
All right, Ralph.
Hopefully I'll go down to D.C. and you get me out there where you're playing. What is it, Brent? What was his name? Crestwood?
Woodmont.
Woodmont. Okay.
Yeah, we have the U.S. Open sectional down here every year, kind of like they have it up there at Century and Old Oaks.
Yeah.
Yeah, Woodmont is the site down here. So
who's the architect?
I'm not even sure. But we have two courses. We got a really championship course, difficult course, and an easier course, made famous by Shigeki Maruyama when he shot 58 in the Open qualifier here. So.
Okay. All right, Wayne. Well, thanks again, and stay on the line 1 second.